Hello and welcome to Trek Prime, episode 47. For tonight, from a slightly new location, different lighting. And we're going to be talking about something that Jeff came up with earlier this week that's an extension of a couple other videos we did, namely about the economics of Earth in the future. And I was going to say it myself. I don't want to steal any thunder from you. So you got to recap what we were just talking about a second ago about what this is about.
Okay, well, I wanted to talk about what Roddenberry used to say in many of his interviews was that in the future of humanity, that things like wealth and materialistic items wouldn't be something that people would just hoard themselves with. I guess after the like the economy and everything would change, I guess people's priorities would change along with it, and so you have people that doing things simply because they like to do things, and when you have replicators and stuff like that, it's not like people really have to have things all the time around them on hand.
Scarcity.
Yeah, I mean, it's just there, and then if you don't need it, you just put it back in the thing and have it dematerialized.
Earth and Enterprise, I can't remember the name of the episode. Didn't somebody ask them about where does your I think how it was phrased, what happens to your waste in the bathroom, basically? And
Yeah.
Trip just said, you got to remember we recycle everything.
Yeah.
And the conversation took a very interesting turn, but the point is that so we get the impression that recycling is just a given in that time.
Yeah.
The replicators, what you don't use, you put back, and it makes you new food. Trip's conversation about what they put back in there, but that's a whole other story. We're not talking about that tonight, but anyway, so yeah, that's your basic theme.
Yeah, and I wanted to kind of show in some of the episodes that were made, how they kind of dealt with that, showed different sides of that issue.
Okay, so you want to kind of you want to start, well, we usually do TOS up through Enterprise.
I think the first one would be an obvious one is Court Martial, where you have Samuel T. Cogley, surrounding himself with books.
He's
like one of the holdovers of people that doesn't like too much technology, but he seems to have this affinity for books. And
I totally know what you mean. Him telling Kirk, books.
Yeah,
that's where you can find where the law is. Books.
Yeah. By today's standards, would we call that a hoarder or
right?
Just,
yeah, the kind of the usually the male version of the crazy cat lady.
Yeah. I guess in some ways, even then, you would still maybe find some people that might still do that out of a sense of fear, maybe of the computer.
And I noticed Kirk found that really weird.
Yeah.
He was looking around like, well, a computer takes up much less space. I get everything in here. I never use it. It's all books. He just loved the idea of being able to open it and kind of that nostalgic.
Yeah.
And it's funny you mentioned that because what we're doing now with the podcast and social media and the idea of tablets and e-readers and things like that in the past 10 years, we're kind of facing that right now. Yeah. People who are into books are turning into Samuel Cogleys.
That's right.
They're kind of, we're already kind of facing that issue.
Yeah, because a lot of people won't get like a book on a tablet or something like that. They'd rather have the physical book in hand.
And, I think with Samuel Cogley, like it is today, we're closer to it now, so we kind of see it a little easier because we're living in the middle of it. But I think in that time, Cogley's an older guy. I'm not entirely certain how old he is. People live longer in the future, but, he was probably alive at least.
I'm thinking it was probably something that maybe his family...
When the Klingon War happened. And,
what I'm thinking is that Cogley comes from probably an old school kind of thing.
Well, he's an older guy, so he might have looked younger, but might have actually been a guy who was like 100. He might have been alive during Archer's time.
But still, that would still put him, past that, that post-scarcity economy.
Right, but still, people in that time were still into books and some of the older ways still, I'm sure.
Yeah, it's like, like his father probably was, kind of a person that liked books, and maybe his grandfather, so it's like something that got...
He might have been a scion from a legal family who had these books passed down and passed down the importance of the history of it, and it just got in his blood.
Yeah.
I mean, if you look back at a lot of legal families who have scions or medicine families, they get these old dusty books, and they're like, well, we can put them in iPads. We got to have these books because they're our children, they're our families, they're our knowledge. There's a sentimental attachment, and I think that's what Samuel Cogley had.
They have their own libraries, practically,
Right, where Kirk is definitely a man of his generation, the mid-23rd century, revels in the present in that time, romanticizes the new world that's coming into Starfleet and the exploration and everything, and Cogley sits in the courtroom talking about Magna Carta, the Bible, all old stuff.
Yeah.
But maybe, ironically, maybe in that time, he's somewhat of a conservative that era, where he sees the past as being the main source of inspiration for life.
Hmm.
He revels in the past, where, Kirk lived right in the present into the future, So, yeah, I mean, that could be, in his situation, that kind of legal scion thing that his family might have been. I haven't read the original script, but I almost heard where he's almost wanting to say, my father, my grandfather, my great-great-grandfather, his uncle's cousin's former roommate were all lawyers before me. I could kind of see him building this whole family, that his family was long scion of law people.
Yeah, there's another character in that episode that also had to deal with an obsession for things, and that was Ben Finney. And the reason is that
interesting choice.
His whole motive against Kirk was that Kirk got command of the Enterprise, and he felt he should have had it.
Yeah, and it's funny. And it's funny you mentioned that, because that could also spill over into Kirk a little too.
Well, yeah, it can in that way, Kirk, because, I guess at the beginning when he had the Enterprise, it was more like, a guy that didn't want to lose at a mission or anything like that, and he was driven to save his ship, which meant saving his crew and all that. But I think over the time, he just kind of liked the ship itself. It sort of became his home, and kind of got attached to it, like a lot of his other, like Scotty. He was also kind of attached.
Right. There was a scene in The Naked Time where Spock is lamenting his parents, and Kirk gets that Psi 2000 intoxication, and all of a sudden he's caressing the ship and saying there, like, now I know why they call her she.
Yeah.
I mean,
it was probably like the beginnings of his thinking of the ship as more than just some sort of
and of course, to add some humor to this, Spock's looking at him like, you two going in a room or what? Just basically that's the vibe Spock's giving him.
Yeah.
Like, he's anthropomorphizing this ship. And when people get intoxicated, they show their true feelings. So you see how obsessed Kirk is with the ship at that point.
Yeah.
Later on, he blows it up, so not so much. But I'm just saying that, I think that Kirk, and Sulu brought that up too. Why do we always call a ship a she, like she's a fine ship or something?
Yeah, well, he didn't understand at the time because he was only a lieutenant, so until he got his own ship.
Yeah, and he was a younger guy than Kirk, and presumably younger.
Yeah.
Yes. And maybe he never seemed to anthropomorphize the Excelsior that much. What we saw of him, I don't know, maybe he did, but it was more the command and the responsibility and the mission that interested Sulu. The ship was just a ship.
Well, I don't know. I mean, from Star Trek 3, when he first saw the Excelsior, there was sort of like a love light in Sulu's eye when he saw that ship. Like, oh boy, because I think in the story, in the novelization of Star Trek 3, Sulu was supposed to get command of that ship, but he passed it up because he wanted to do this one more mission with Kirk.
I wanted to get Spock. Yeah.
And so Styles got command of the ship.
Interesting.
So,
I can read that Star Trek 3 novel. There's all the stuff in there that you keep telling me that I didn't see in the movie.
Yeah, I mean, those the novels, they really explain a lot. So yeah, I mean, there was that part of it that, he liked loyalty to his friends and being on the ship one last time. But I think he was going to be promoted to captain and take command of the Excelsior, but that got delayed until after Star Trek 5, and then he finally got the ship. So
well, maybe he did. So we have all these characters romanticizing their ships.
Yeah.
Now, I'm going to discount Sisko right away, and the reason I said that because it was not his station, his species didn't build it, and I don't think he liked it there at all. I think
he tried to make it more homey. Remember, he brought
right. It was kind of like you buy a starter home and then you add things onto it.
Yeah.
But like I said, I don't think he liked it the way it was. I think he wanted to make it like him.
Yeah.
But I don't think it was really attachment to a possession. I think he was trying to basically. I see it like Sisko's home repair. He's going in there like they do those shows where you get an old bucket of a home, and you just build it up. And I mean, Deep Space Nine was kind of a bucket when he got there. They abandoned it, blown parts of it up, and he just had to make it seem homey and nice. So, Janeway, I don't really know if she got attached into Voyager too much.
No, she did. Remember in Year of Hell?
Oh, I'm just thinking of her with the ship blowing up.
Yeah. But I mean, everybody was telling her, "Oh, the Voyager, we should abandon it," and she's like, "No. This is our home and everything." And even at the very end,
that nesting instinct that Cisco had.
I mean, and even at the very end, when the ship was on its last leg, she was leaving. All the crew was going to these other ships, but she was all alone on Voyager, and she's like, "Oh, Voyager still has a little more fight left."
It was objectification, but more like you'd objectify a house.
Yeah.
Like this was a resident where her family were.
Yeah.
But with Kirk, it was more like a love.
Starting to see it as a living thing, because remember how Tuvok was telling her it's just a collection of conduits and metal, and she's like, "Oh no, Voyager's more than that," and she's
right. Vulcans don't romanticize starships. To them it's all logical.
Yeah.
Romance isn't logical. So, I think that Vulcans might have a policy they'd rather leave than go down with the ship. They think the ship can be replaced.
Yeah.
Where humans. And, I'm wondering if that's the key to this whole thing with possessions in the future. Do you think it might be something that Gene Roddenberry decided to add in that, well, humans have overcome the need for materialism as a philosophy, but there is a human need to possess things in another way?
That's the thing, though. I mean, because if you look at Star Trek The Next Generation, there's very few episodes that deal with that particular subject. But I think what happened is after Gene Roddenberry passed away, I think you saw more kind of characters that did have sort of an obsession to things.
Yeah, which we saw in TOS a lot,
Yeah, you did, and it seemed like it was more appropriate because it's like another 100 years from TOS, things are going to be even less like that, which I thought was pretty good, that they kind of stepped.
Although you never heard anybody you never heard anybody like Picard, if somebody messed up his uniform or his phaser. That was my favorite uniform. You never heard anything like that from him, really.
Yeah.
With his ship, he wasn't there when Riker destroyed it. Basically, Troy destroyed it by some means. Some say it was Troy's fault, but
he seemed to take it in stride, though. I mean, it was like
it was like, well, this won't be the last ship that has the name Enterprise.
Yeah. And then remember when he was digging through his ready room when he was trying to find that.
Right. He was more interested in his.
Galen gave him, and he was like, he picked it up, looked at it, and he just put it down. But he went and got that book instead. So here was another example of where a book still means something, even in the
But you think that basically Picard's whole thing about possession was based on bibliophile?
Well, Shakespeare meant a lot to him.
Right. I mean, even though Shakespeare is in the computer, he still wanted that solid form.
Yeah, because we often saw him reading books.
And I'm wondering, do you think that perhaps the reason why Gene Roddenberry and Rick Berman kept that thread of possession in there was a human need, not only for possession, but for solidity?
Yeah. Well, remember in that episode, in the movie First Contact, when Data and Picard were looking at the rocket that Zephyr and Cochran was going to use, and they were kind of touching it, and he was like saying, how it bonds a person to an object when they can feel it or something like that. Well, maybe that's kind of what's going on with books. When they kind of bond with the book and the story when they have it in their hands or something like that.
Well, I mean, it's kind of like now. We may look at something from ancient Rome, like the Colosseum. People can kind of remove themselves that thousands of people get basically murdered there and still be mired in the history. That's where if you went to ancient Rome, mention of the Colosseum would induce mortal terror in people.
Yeah.
It was a murdering place. Now, I mean, I don't think anybody will ever go to Auschwitz like that. I mean, that just got too far. But for some reason, we're so distant from the Colosseum that for some reason, basically, it served a very similar function to that thing from Logan's Run, that carousel.
That's right.
Basically a murder machine that had the spiritual value of the moments.
Yeah.
But it was basically a murder place for the most part, and where there were gladiatorial fights and fights of the death. I mean, it was not a place you went for a happy good time jamboree, but we look at it today as having historical significance. Dr. Sung, when he encountered Data, alluded to this, and I don't know if you were going to mention this too. He asked Data for some reason, and I'm not really sure why he asked. He said, Data, why are humans being so obsessed with old things? And Data didn't understand the question. He said, if an alien saw an ancient temple, he would say, tear that down. It's taking up space. Put on something new, something modern. But to a human, that temple is a shrine. And Data's answer was that humanity sometimes had this need to link itself with its past to go into the future, basically. So that could also have a lot to do with why humans are kind of still attached to possessions in some ways in that time.
Yeah. Another TOS episode takes that subject to an extreme, where, but it's not a human culture, it's an alien culture, where they actually will sacrifice lives to keep what they have, and that's A Taste of Armageddon.
Right, because, well, is that really possession or more a war?
Well, yes, it was a war, but that they were afraid to lose the possessions that they had, the cities that they built, so they were willing to sacrifice millions of lives with a computer to save their society, their cities. I mean, it's like, it doesn't matter if we all die as long as our cities are still standing, and our things are still there.
Yeah, that's interesting, because the undercurrent I picked up from that is that they just love the idea of combat, but they didn't want the dirty part of it. They wanted to be little redheads of combat. They wanted to
They made it so clean and such a thing. There was no need to stop it. If they saw their cities destroyed and their planet devastated, they would have stopped it 500 years ago, but they didn't.
So you think that basically, again, that nostalgic thing with them is like, these cities we build, we want to keep them so good. We'll do this. But like I said, usually in our society, we notice if cities are destroyed and if lives are lost in terrible wars and bombs and explosions, then we usually want to stop wars.
Yeah.
Usually we stop
in order to stop that war, Kirk had to bring that horror of war back into their
and destroy the computer and say, yep, you get an alternative. Either fight a real war or you start talking peace.
That's right.
And I mean, I know fan fiction may have another way, but they were talking peace and the outlook was hopeful, so I'm looking at, I know there's elements of fandom we discussed where it didn't go so well, but
yeah,
I'm hoping that's just fandom, because I always like to think those things work out, because I tend to be an optimist like that. But still, I'm just saying you're right. If you go back, it's like the tip of the iceberg. If you go back to that story, the tip of the iceberg at the end of the day is an anti-war story.
Yeah.
Okay, but if you dig underneath that, it's also an anti-possessiveness story, because they just want the material elements of their society. Their people, well, the people aren't material, but they kind of are. But the people, and how do they say it? The people die, but the culture goes on.
Yeah.
Because if you see how when war is destroyed, it often changes cultures and the way things are going. They just wanted their whole layout and their cities and their lives basically kept safe.
Yeah, from orbit, it looked like everything was hunky dory. You wouldn't even know there was a war going on.
Right, because it was all they were all playing Missile Command basically.
Yeah.
They were all playing some kind of video game war down there.
Yeah.
That anticipated the whole video game war trend of the 80s. Remember?
Yeah.
They had all those video game war movies and the Reagan's SDI. It kind of was basically that. It was like, except SDI would have been real wars in space, but this was like fighting wars with, and you notice that nobody ever after that thought of making fighting wars with Nintendos. That's basically what it was. It was a cyber war.
Yeah.
A literal cyber war. So, basically, and again, because they wanted to protect the civilization they built.
Yeah.
And, actually, it's not too far from Goshevin and that friggin' aqueduct.
Yeah. And I was going to bring that up too, but yeah, you're right.
I'm sorry. Goshevin is becoming.
It's the same thing where this guy is going to sacrifice all his people just to save
the aqueduct, the blood and sweat of the aqueduct. When I watch that, I think of how ridiculous he is about the whole thing, and Data's not getting it.
But I think he had no idea what the Shellyak were, what they were capable of, and Data had to spell it out for them in the greatest detail.
Yeah, basically, he's like,
defend yourself against a hand phaser. How are you going to defend yourself against a starship in orbit that can drop weapons on you and wipe you all out?
Right, and when he basically said, this is set to stun, this is not, and he puts this thing in and goes in there, we lost our aqueduct, and like, there's other places to go, come on. That is the most single-minded example of materialism Because honestly, I know he's trying to be so. I think his earnestness is what makes him. I don't know the actor's name who played Goshevin, but he's bringing that water out and he's saying, "Do you know what this is, Data?" And he says, "Oh, it's water. This is it. No, it's not water. It's blood and it's sweat." And when I first saw that as a young person, I thought it's like water to me.
Yeah.
I didn't understand that he was making some very grand figurative statement. It's our labor we put into this aqueduct, and this is the only reason why we're going to stay here. You notice that when Data destroyed the aqueduct, he was like, okay, well, it's gone. It's time to go.
Yeah.
He stated his whole ego on this thing that, okay, it was a very big and nice aqueduct, but there are many places you can build aqueducts.
I think what it was a symbol of his authority over them, too, I think, because his grandfather is the one that made
and, that gets into another element of materialism.
Yeah.
It being linked to authority and then being pompous about it like he wasn't like, oh, this is the blood and sweat of our labor and basically anything. My father walked this way and put this stone, and he was just making this whole thing up, and Data's just not getting this. And I mean, that would have been 5 minutes pretty much if Riker had been able to go down there. He couldn't, because he would have understood that attachment to things.
That's right.
Even though I don't think he particularly was attached to a lot of things. Maybe his trombone. Although he gave one of them to Thomas Riker. But
yeah.
I mean, but yeah, humans still have things. But one thing you notice about the 24th century, I don't know if you notice this, people don't have a lot of things.
That's true. But what they do have, they cherish.
Right, because remember, if you have something, you can use it and then recycle it. And, some little kid's Starship model they're playing with could be your dinner that night, basically.
You see, like today, we buy things just to buy things, but in the future, what they collect is basically something that means something to them personally. It's not something they find in a store and they just want it. Things that they have mean something personal to them. I
wanted to bring up an episode. Maybe you were going to bring this up too. The Neutral Zone from TNG.
No, I wasn't going to bring that one up, but
I'm bringing that because that episode kind of revolves around a lot of materialism. Because basically, it's a butcher, baker, candlestick maker kind of story. You have not everybody's favorite, but I like it. And here's the reason. It brings people from our time. I don't know what, from the 20th century, I guess. One of them is this very flaky singer. The other is a housewife who's mourning her family being gone. And the other is a financier only interested in his money.
Yep.
And, the singer guy is sort of a funny relic, doesn't take anything too seriously. People kind of find him amusing. The housewife has issues that somebody in that time could have.
Yeah.
Separation from family. So her situation is easy to understand.
That's right.
The banker's whole language and understanding of things is completely foreign to everybody. They have no idea what he's talking about.
Yeah.
Some of them they don't even know what a bank is. Like, it's so antiquated. Like, we talk about that old stuff. We don't have banks anymore, And that's when Picard came in there and had to make that speech about human beings no longer having that need for possessions.
Yeah.
Where this guy had defined himself on that. But again, like Goshevin, it was about power. And to the point where he actually waltzed onto the bridge and started telling Picard how to negotiate with Romulans when he never heard of them.
Yeah.
Kind of looking at it like you would a bank merger.
Yeah.
So that's when that whole speech about humanity of getting over the need for possessions. Yeah. That's why Gene Roddenberry bought in the Ferengi.
Yeah.
Whose entire society is about a male patriarchal system who are trying aggressively to make sure that they hold on to their possessions, to their profit, to the point of the pay to go into somebody's house.
Yeah.
And where they don't want women to earn profit because they want to keep their profits going. Everything is about
everything our society loathes about ourselves. That seems they praise it.
Because
build on
it. They call basically their version of Trump Tower the sacred marketplace.
Yeah.
Money is a sacred thing to them. We always have this thing about greed is good, money is God. Literally, money is God. And I can see Ferengi sitting there kissing and praying to go press Latinum.
Yeah.
And of course, I know Gene Roddenberry conceived them as caricatures of Donald Trump, really. I guess that would be the best description. Yeah. People who are all money.
I think it was necessary, at least, maybe it was a story device to kind of illustrate more as to how different humans would be to Ferengi. Because you notice Quark and Deep Space Nine would often say, well, you were once like us, you know,
Yes,
and everything.
there was an episode where Quark and Cisco were on this planet, and they would get into some discussion. And he said, the reason I think humans have a problem with Ferengi is that it used to be a lot worse than Ferengi.
Yeah.
Energy inquisitions, concentration camps, we never had anything like that.
Yeah.
So, I mean, of course, that could just be him digressing. I mean, but I'm just saying that, you know, maybe the Ferengi just figured if we ever get into war, we'll just buy somebody out.
Yeah.
We'll just buy out our enemies. End of story.
That's how they freed Quark's mother.
Right, they didn't go in there and fight the Gemini. They just paid them. They just paid off the border or whatever. I think it wasn't it Iggy Pop they were paying off or something.
Yeah, they did a trade. They gave him a prisoner for his
right,
mother.
because the Ferengi are tradesmen. They're profiteers.
Yeah.
I mean, they'll sell weapons, but they don't per se go around. They have energy whips, but they're basically just in the phasers, but they're just basically used to guard money.
Yeah. But all his buddies that he brought with him, he had to pay them all to do it, you know, except for the one that was an assassin.
I think at the end of the day, Ferengi might attack and start to immobilize it.
Yeah.
They get out of the situation, pay us this much money.
Mm.
You know, they're all about ransoms and you know, their whole culture is completely profit based. And I always saw them, and I think it was Rick Berman who kept the Ferengi around because he thought they were the most like contemporary humans, which is kind of cynical because there are people who are definitely not Ferengi-like in our time.
Yeah.
Just saying. Yeah. So anyway, not Ferengi-like here. But anyway, so yeah, of course, their whole thing is not only possessions, but they kind of see money itself as a possession. You know, like if you notice, a lot of the Ferengi houses are spare because they don't want to spend that precious sacred money of theirs.
Yeah.
They just want to acquire and profit, which is pretty much what capitalists do in a lot of ways. They acquire but don't utilize that money. Whereas Starfleet, you know, and if you remember, didn't the Ferengi buy warp technology?
I think so. I don't remember.
I think Nog was saying that we, the humans accomplished it, but we had to buy the warp technology from somebody. He didn't say who it was because Quark interrupted him, but I guess they had to buy it off somebody. I wonder if they bought it from the Klingons or Romulans or something. I don't know.
Yeah, any number of species out there, they could have got it.
The Vulcans wouldn't have sold it to them because they probably wouldn't have thought the Ferengi were doing much good. So, but somebody would have. The Orions may have sold it to them.
Yeah, the Orions. Yeah, they're just about as bad.
And they're again profiteers. And that's something I wanted to mention. And this is something very important to know. Not every culture in the Star Trek universe, all the aliens, deal with human money the same way.
That's right.
Most of the other races actually have a currency system.
Yep.
I'm not sure what it was, but I believe the Klingons had one.
Yep.
Because in Star Trek 6, Spock made a mention to Klingons' enormous military budget.
Yeah.
And the Klingon economy couldn't take it. We heard economy mentioned on Earth only once by Picard, saying the economy of the future was somewhat different. But since when did you ever hear the Starfleet talk about their budget? If you can recycle everything, who needs a budget?
Yeah.
A budget is the ultimate flower of scarcity. Because budget means control. And if you have nothing to control, you just make what you need.
That's why I always wonder, I mean, how is it that the Federation, which really doesn't really use kind of money, I mean, how would they do trade with other species that would want money?
Well, we kind of see that in Voyager. Are we going back to that New World Economy thing? Did we mention this in the New World Economy, or is this kind of relevant to this one?
I don't know if we talked about that specifically, but
in Voyager, maybe it was because of the necessity of what they were doing, they often trade stuff from the ship for certain other things.
Yeah.
That may have been just necessity, but I figure that's kind of the way they do things. They would kind of trade, well, you know, if you have a resource, we'll give you one that you have.
Yeah.
I figured it was what we call barter.
Well, here's the thing. You got the Ferengi like to use gold-pressed latinum, right? Wouldn't that be something that the Federation could replicate?
Well, we can go back to Cat's Paw with that.
Yeah.
That guy, Korob, gave him all these little rubies and jewels and was going on and on about them. And Kirk was looking at rocks. We got all these rocks.
Yeah.
Manufacture a ton of them in the Enterprise. We don't need this stuff. So even on the Enterprise, they could just manufacture all the rubies and jewels they want.
Yeah.
So obviously, even at that time with particle synthesis, these things have no value.
So maybe that's how they get things, is maybe they just replicate what they need to give it to them, and they're happy and they get their stuff and they're happy.
And, because of Earth philosophically in the future, they have no need to acquire. It's only replicate what they need.
Yeah.
Like, because I remember there was an episode where Quark did something. Oh, yeah, I think it was that one where he was a weapons dealer for a while, and he damaged the cargo bay.
Yeah.
And Cisco said it would cost so much money to fix it. And Odo said Quark said he'd pay it off, and Cisco like, well, it works for me.
Yeah.
Now, I don't think that was a Federation thing, though. That was a Bajoran administrative station, and they have a currency system. So, it was probably... And the weird thing is, if the Federation had control over Deep Space Nine, they probably need to fix it up their own way.
Yeah.
So, I think it's into issues of economy. But as far as possession in that time, I don't know. They never really explored the alien cultures, how possessive alien cultures were, except Ferengi.
Yeah.
But they're possessive over money itself. That's really what they're possessive over.
Yeah.
Not so much buying things, but just being able to have money. Is there another episode you can mention as an example of possessions?
Yeah. There was another TOS episode that dealt with possession in a way where someone that's coming to the end of their career and their life in a way is so afraid of being overlooked that he drove himself to create a computer that was supposed to be something that would bring him back into the light, and that was the ultimate computer. And you have Dr. Richard Daystrom, who spent his life since he was young making all these great computers all the time that everybody bought, but then after a while people around him were building on his work and they were making their own stuff, and he felt like he was ignored, so he tried to come out with a computer that was supposed to outdo all the computers, and he went overboard and he ruined it.
Yeah, he created a monster he couldn't control.
Yeah. So this was a guy that's possession of himself, basically, of his own identity.
Yeah.
He had that.
So the M5 computer became the center of his own ego.
Yeah.
And when the computer started breaking down, he started breaking down.
That's right.
And like I said, he lost perspective of that silver thread. Do you think that was more objectification, or do you think that was more like a psychological thing?
I think it was more of a psychological thing because what I got the impression was that he had put so much time and effort into creating the greatest thing that it's ever been made that he overlooked all the things that would go wrong with it just to get this thing out there. And by putting his own engrams into the computer, he didn't think that because his personality was flawed, the computer would be flawed. He overlooked that. And I think Spock picked it up right off when he was telling Spock how it worked. I think even he kind of figured because he always looked at humans as kind of a flawed species, and you really couldn't make a perfect computer with an imperfect basis.
There was a key there where I think was it Bones who asked, why is it M5 and why not M1? Was it Bones?
Yeah, he didn't keep up with computer stuff at the time.
Right. Well, and of course, Daystrom gave him an answer that I think said, well, M1 through 4 were not entirely successful. Yeah. In other words, kind of almost implying that he kind of knew there was a problem right off the bat.
Yeah.
Oftentimes one, maybe two, when your first 4 prototypes fail, usually people give it a rest.
That's right.
If this guy hadn't had a breakdown, he might have went on until, I'll make the M15 work.
Yeah.
He would have kept going on. It would, and that was one thing about that they constantly return back to in TOS in general, obsession.
Yeah.
There's a phrase and a song called Possession Obsession. Do you think that is kind of something that they toyed with in those days?
Yeah.
Possessiveness being linked to obsessiveness?
Yeah, that's right.
Because, like you said, the self-possession of Daystrom, he created this computer and it became kind of almost like part of him.
Yeah, because he pinned so much hope on it,
Can you think of another example in TOS?
Well, another character that was like Daystrom was Professor Zimmerman. With him and his holographic people.
Oh, in Voyager.
Yeah, on Voyager, yeah. He was the same way, basically. He was trying to make the perfect emergency medical program, and he just couldn't make one that was.
And he ended up becoming kind of a crazy cat lady character. He had a holographic fly he created, and that very bizarre iguana. I remember him.
And the one that said jerks.
Yes, the one that repeated everything in a weird way.
Like a parrot.
And it had this really weird baritone voice. I always found that iguana very strange. But again, it's kind of like a guy who just does animatronic stuff. It was just, he had all these little holograms running all over the place, and he was, and again, when he saw the one model himself, he was embarrassed about it.
That's right.
And because oh, that's just nostalgia. That one didn't work out.
Yeah.
And then actually, because he was so embarrassed, actually condemned the rest of them to slavery, basically.
Yeah.
Although, it's hard to mention the word slavery without it being connected to an economic system. But I mean, usually slavery means somebody who's owned. But, or has no rights. And these holographic beings had no rights.
Yeah.
So usually everything in the Federation is about expanding rights. But that's another thing I wanted to mention. I don't know if you noticed this. Is it me, or when they first started introducing holograms, like with EMH, they were kind of seen as Federation property.
Mm.
And you'll notice, and this is something I don't know if you noticed, have you noticed that even in Voyager Next Generation, the word property is used to describe things in the Federation?
Yeah.
Is not property a possession?
Used in that way, I don't know how to answer that. I mean, when you say it's property, I mean, yeah, it is claiming ownership over something, but whether that's, a greed based in greed or vanity or something like that, I don't know. I mean, I think that's more, something they're saying, well, this belongs to us or something like that.
Do we ever do that that podcast about whether the Federation was communist or not?
Oh, yeah, way back, yeah, I think.
Well, yeah, because, we were talking, that may be one of the reasons why people think it is, because, Picard once said, I don't own the Enterprise, I command her, implying that everything in the Federation is owned by them.
Yeah, well, as Starfleet goes, yeah, it would be.
But then again, how is that much different than the military?
Yeah, well, that's what I'm saying.
Or the Navy in general. That's not unusual. I mean, the captains of Navy ships don't own their own ships.
That's right.
So that's I don't see that as being common. I see that as being an extension of the Navy.
Yeah, it's just a job, having command.
The ship is theirs, and they just, But it's weird to think somebody would actually own a ship like that.
Yeah.
I mean, the Ferengis might own their ships for all I know, but
yeah, they probably buy them.
either that or the Nagus owns them, and they're just renting them out to the crew or something.
I know the Klingon ships are based in the family ownership. They have
the houses own different ships.
Yeah, the families have their own little fleets, basically. At least that's how I understood it on Deep Space Nine. You had, remember when they were doing the, well, not Deep Space Nine, but that two-part episode on Next Generation where Worf left the Enterprise to...
right, the Duras and Gowron had their separate ships.
They had to get different houses together to stand up against, the Duras. So, yeah, I guess you could say that, there doesn't really have like a Klingon military fleet. It's more like Klingon families having
Klingons, you think Klingons is more of a caste system?
Something like that, yeah.
You mean where people of a certain status attain certain rights?
Yeah. I suppose the richer you are in the Klingon world, the more privileges you get, and you can buy ships.
And, I don't know knowing how Klingon society works, does your wealth depend on how many glorious battles you fought and how many people you killed? And
yeah.
I mean, a warrior culture, I would say that your profit, I don't know. I mean, it seems like everything in their society is violent somehow. Like, what? Do you just kill somebody and get all their stuff? I mean, I don't know, because they're always fighting. That's kind of the Klingon stereotype, is they're always fighting with each other.
Yeah, somehow I would think that when you beam down on the Klingon homeworld, you would be surrounded by battles all over the place, And
although, they do say that there are some disciplines they have.
Yeah.
But, again, it's a deep respect thing Klingons have.
Yeah.
Where, your house is your house, my house is my house. If you join me, we'll be brothers in battle. But if you don't, you'll be battling with us. So
in a way, that whole society revolves around clinging to the past. If you want to talk about possessions, everything to them is about.
Klingons actually a very conservative society in that they're all about preserving past honors.
Yeah, and Kalis is always the thing that focuses them on in the future what they want to do, and they're always reaching to Kalis to motivate what they do, and it's like clinging to things.
It's kind of like I don't know. I'm trying to think of the best way to describe it. It's a little Rome, a little bit of Viking.
Yeah.
Even to the point where Klingons kill their own god, apparently.
Yeah, it's true.
Kalis and Molar, I guess, did that. So.
Yeah.
But, so Klingons, I think, are more attached to their history than things.
Yeah, they all want to be like Kalis. Their whole life is centered around trying to become as great as Kalis, the unforgettable.
So the Klingons are kind of these into deifying Kalis, like almost a paganism.
Yeah.
And, I think it's a more hyper-religious thing with them. I don't know if profit's their main motivation. I don't see it that way. Now, just from their society, I would kind of think that Vulcans profiteering off something would be kind of illogical and go the way of the dinosaur with Serac.
Mm.
I don't know. I mean, I don't know if the Vulcans have a currency system or if they're like humans, because I never really see Vulcans buying anything.
Yeah.
I just I don't know. The society is so heavily ordered.
They would only do what logic would suggest they do, I guess,
If they needed to, they would, but
yeah.
I don't think that obsession with obsession wouldn't be logical.
Yeah.
It's usually driven by emotion.
Yeah.
So they, like I said, they would have what they needed and nothing else.
Yeah.
I mean, that's how I see it. They, I don't see a Vulcan house filled with a lot of stuff.
Yeah. Which was kind of a surprise when you saw Enterprise and we got to see T'Pol's mother. And
she had maybe a little too much stuff what you think a Vulcan would have.
Yeah, I mean, it looked too human in a way, her home.
But maybe she needed everything that was in there. I don't know.
It just seemed like, it was very well decorated and stuff,
I
mean,
she had a plant in there.
Yeah.
She might want to say to T'Pol, having this plant is logical because that plant moves around and cleans the house.
Yeah. When
I'm not around. So that plant is logical being there. I mean, that may sound ridiculous, but I mean, I don't know. It seems like a human home is arranged, but I don't see Vulcans as needing a lot of things just to have them. I see Vulcans as being very efficient.
Yeah. Well, Tuvok's quarters never seemed like it was that, we just had basic stuff in it and that was it.
Well, I mean, they would need their meditation stuff because that's how they maintain their logic.
That's right.
But that's more spiritual.
Yeah.
That isn't really. I mean, you attain certain things. It's a whole different system. It's almost like a Buddhist thing.
Yeah.
Vulcans wouldn't buy it; it would be bestowed upon them.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's a different culture. But okay, back to possession theme episodes. TOS, you're not finished with that one yet?
Well, actually, there's one with a very noticeable possession problem, and that was Kirk in Star Trek: The Motion Picture.
Yes, basically undercutting Decker's command.
Yeah, and being very bold about it too. I mean, it's he didn't care. It was like he tried to say, "Oh, I'm sorry," but he
come in and said, "Okay, Decker, shove out. I'm taking over."
Yeah.
Basically. And then when Sonak died, okay, you guys take over double duty. You're less going to think the whole movie.
Yeah. And so I know a lot of fans had a problem with that, but the fact is, it seemed like a natural progression after his 5-year mission to have more of a need to be back on that ship again.
Yeah, because it was a beautiful lady, as he said to Mudd's androids, and he loved her.
Well, he liked being out in space, but he also liked being out in space on the Enterprise. It was like his home. It was like,
Like I said, basically, if he wanted to be out in space, he could have gone there, and he could have just basically, I want command of any orbital ship you're getting,
Yeah, but he got promoted, and he shouldn't have, and he took the job, and he didn't want it. He just he was ready to go back out for another mission. So, here comes Decker, a guy standing in his way in that chair, and, hey, this is my opportunity. V'ger is coming, and now I can get the ship back. So he goes to his superior, and he, bullshits him into getting the ship back.
Right. And, And he tells, it is Scotty on the shuttle pod, he says, oh, they gave her back to me.
Yeah.
And it's like, no, more accurately, you Shanghai Admiral Lagora and giving it back to you.
That's right.
I mean, even Bones alluded to that, that Nagora invoked some reverse activation clause. In other words, drafted Bones.
Yeah. And I think he did that on purpose because he knew that Kirk was going to be unfamiliar with the ship after all that time. And so he figured McCoy would be the best guy to watch over him to make sure that he didn't screw up. So I think that's kind of why, and I think Kirk, suggested that he'd be there. Kirk was smart enough to know that he was going to be, kind of offbeat with the ship and the crew. So, I guess he told Nagora to reactivate him and get him on the Enterprise as fast as possible. So that's why you see him beamed up in a friggin' disco outfit. With a beard.
With a chain.
He was probably right in a bar while he was dancing, and they just pulled him right up off the floor. In the leisure suit. I just think of what Sarah Silverman was saying to the Doctor on Voyager. Oh, Mr. Leisure Suit. That's the vibe in that. Mr. Leisure Suit.
That was the funniest part because, Star Trek usually tried to look kind of futuristic. That was the part where it definitely looked like 1979.
Oh, yeah.
Where Bones was wearing the leisure suit.
It looked like he was wearing John Travolta's outfit.
Exactly.
With the big collar and the necklace.
Yeah.
And,
Bones staying alive, I guess.
This is supposed to be what they wear in Georgia. Because I don't remember anybody in the South looking like that. They usually have a hat on or something, or they got jeans or.
According to a novel I read, Bones is actually on a planet called Arcturus.
Yeah.
And apparently Arcturus in the 23rd century is one big planet-wide club.
Yeah.
It's like a Las Vegas.
Yeah.
The whole planet's like a pleasure planet, So he was apparently there, and apparently there too wore a beard. It's a long story, but that's fan canon, so I'm not really going to go into that too much. But anyway, we're going off the subject here. But yeah, motion picture, Kirk is, again, but this is not the Enterprise he was possessed with. This is some totally new ship, basically.
Yeah.
It's supposed to be the Connie, but there's barely anything left of the original ship.
Yeah.
Maybe if you pull out a certain thing, there's some old circuit from the old Enterprise, I'll put that back,
Yeah.
I don't know how much of the original ship, I didn't see anything exterior-wise that resembled even inside of the original ship.
That's true, yeah.
But still, for some reason, it was supposed to be kind of the same ship, and
they didn't rename it, or they didn't give it a registry number, so, in the books, it was still the same ship, but technically it wasn't.
It makes you wonder, was the Mark I Constitution class ship made of popsicle sticks or something?
Yeah, they started with wood, and they worked their way up.
Made of popsicle sticks, and they just said, okay, this doesn't work. We'll make a better-looking streamlined ship and still call it 701. And then,
no, actually, it started off with the NX-01. That NX-01 is what became the ship in Star Trek: The Motion Picture.
They took that old ship and they kind of made it into...
They've been updating it for over 200 years.
That same old ship. That's why you don't see the NX-01. It is the Connie. They've just been updating that same Enterprise for years.
Even the Connie wasn't the Connie. It was the NX-01. It was...
That is a silly thought to think about, but that could be the case.
They just took the saucer off, put the nacelles on something else.
Here's another point about Starfleet, too. I don't think Starfleet did that into possessions because they keep recycling their starships.
Yeah, I guess they like the challenge.
I know. Remember, I'm talking in-universe explanation.
Yeah.
In real life, we all know, they could have, if they had the budget, they could have built all these new ships for the next generation.
Yeah.
Then we get all these Excelsior class, and let's have them. They're 75 years away. So Starfleet will use their ships forever. I'm surprised in Star Trek Remastered you didn't see NX-01s hauling cargo. There was a thing I was watching once, it isn't on real Star Trek, where they had DY-100s with warp engines on them. I'm saying, come on!
That's really reaching into the past.
Can't tell me they repurpose old sleeper ships? It was because of the Woden.
Yeah, the Woden.
Remember where they reused Botany Bay for that? But after they changed it, it was one of those robot ships again.
Yeah.
they changed it. But I mean, because they had that Woden in there, they figured, oh, they're using DY500s, they're strapping warp engines to them now. And I was like, no, they wouldn't be using. I mean, but I mean, the only country that does that now is Russia because they're still using Soyuz variants.
Yeah, well, God, their economy is like.
But still, I mean, when you're talking about Soyuz, that's only still about 40, 50 years old.
Yeah.
I mean, we're talking in the 23rd century. If they have DY500s, they're using 300-year-old starships. You know, what would you possibly use something that old? But I could clearly see them just like putting an NX-01 hauling cargo around and with Kirk in them. Like, that wouldn't be that old. I mean, I'm surprised you didn't see more Daedalus class ships like just kind of hanging around.
It's just lazy engineering, you know. They don't have time to design a whole new thing, so they just take what they got. And
Well, I think that kind of goes with the Starfleet aesthetic of West not, because if they function like our world, they'd want a new model of every ship like every year.
Yeah.
You know, because it's economically, you know, we want to get a market. The Federation aren't interested in the market. They're interested in, you know, it's like with computers.
Yeah.
You notice how you always get the impression with computers that they have technology to make the computers all work where they're supposed to, but then they'll say, you know, well, let's put a little bit out there, then put a little bit in the next one, but keep people buying, basically.
Yeah.
We call it planned obsolescence, but, you know, very few outside the marketing world know how that really works and just make up conspiracies about it. But in the Federation's time, I kind of see them as not seeing their starships as something they need to possess, but we'll use them until they are unusable anymore.
Yeah.
I mean, because ships like the Excelsior, I imagine, those are kind of modular. You can kind of take certain things out of them.
Yeah.
They can put new bridges in there. You can update certain technology.
The better the computer is, the less people you need to run it. So it gives it more room, you know.
I mean, I always found it kind of funny in the beginning of Enterprise when they pull up to the NX-01 in the cockpit of the Phoenix.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking, so they're still using a shuttle pod model off of Zephram Cochrane's first warp ship in the late 22nd century. I mean, that would be kind of like having Captain Archer and was Trip with him when they first went up to NX-01?
What's that?
Was it Trip who was with him when they first went up to the ship?
Yeah.
It would have been like them pulling up in a Soyuz or an Apollo.
Yeah.
I just figured, boy, that's a little old, but you can even see that as an old aesthetic where they're using old stuff.
That's right.
You know? So, I mean, they could have just pulled up the NX-01 on one of their brand new shuttle pods.
Yeah.
But no, they used one of those, and even when they built that Warp 2 NX prototype, it still had that Phoenix pod.
That's right. It still kind of looked like it, yeah.
So you can see that the Starfleet aesthetic is kind of, you know, not to let, as Jordy said, disguise. This is something old doesn't mean you throw it away.
Well, look at this. Look at the rocket they're making now for NASA. They got that. What is it? What do they call it? The Orion? I mean, it still looks like a 1960s capsule. So in a way, I mean, I guess what works, they stick with. You know. Yeah,
I think that, you know, in that time it's really more significant because they don't have that. You know, on the other hand, Starfleet still has that need to motive to innovate, but not innovate to corner a market. Innovate in order to make interstellar travel more efficient and better.
Yeah, it's more what's practical.
Like I said, you know, you couldn't go on the kind of missions in the 24th century with a Connie.
Yeah.
And, you know, you also assume that the old ships like the Excelsior class or the Miranda classes, they're used for freighters and cargo ships, and they're not in active duty as standard ships.
Yeah.
You know, the Galaxy class and all the associated classes of the standards at that time and are out there doing things, exploring the galaxy. And every 10 years or so, you see them kind of change over. So I don't think that Starfleet themselves are possessive about the starship's material. I think the captains get attached to them.
Yeah.
But, okay, back to the episodes. I went off on a tangent here about possession of starships, but...
Yeah, in the second movie, we get a look at Kirk's Earth apartment, and it's filled with antiques.
Yeah,
I've always found that a bit odd because he's never really on Earth that long. I mean, he's out in space for 5 years, but yet his apartment is full of things. And I'm thinking, well, when is he ever around to enjoy it? Because
maybe he has a futuristic Roomba that goes around there cleaning up while he's away.
Yeah.
I mean, that building could have been sitting there through the whole 5-year mission originally.
Yeah, and it just collect dust. I mean, he's buy things and he has it shipped back to his apartment. So he gets there and he has all these antiques all around him, all kinds of stuff.
Yeah,
And
he had a Commodore PET in there.
yeah. So to me, that seemed more like a little bit more of hoarding to me. I mean, it just seemed like, I mean, I know we had an affinity for antiques, which we didn't really know about until Star Trek II.
Right, because
Okay.
Scott gave him that book, and he said that he had an affinity for antiques.
Yeah. But
Well,
before that, when he met Samuel Cogley, he thought that guy was a loon because he had all those books. So all of a sudden he's changed. Now he likes antiques now.
Now, Kirk was. Now I'm not sure, but I get the impression Kirk was turning 50 in Star Trek II.
Yeah.
Because it was some birthday he didn't want to deal with, and usually it's 50 that nobody wants to deal with.
Yeah, it was 50. Yeah.
So, because when he got command of the Enterprise, wasn't he like 34, 35 when he first got command?
Yeah, it was in his early 30s. Yeah.
Okay, assuming Where No Man Has Gone Before was that one of his first missions or his first mission on the ship? Or
Yeah, that was like the first, just before the 5-year mission, I think is how it went. Yeah.
That wasn't officially part of the 5-year mission?
Not according to the timeline that Michael Okuda laid out. That was some kind of an individual mission. Before
Was that like some sort of shakedown cruise, maybe?
Not really, because they already had done that before Kirk took command of the ship.
Because Kirk's ship was very similar to the Cage ship when he first got it.
Yeah.
And then
it's like Roddenberry said, he wanted to have a ship with history. So
right. So we got to assume maybe before the Cage, the Enterprise had a few
upgrades. Yeah.
Upgrades. The same way they're trying to say it did in Star Trek Discovery. We're not talking about that. Anyway, the point is that I'm just saying.
Yeah.
Whatever. But so yeah, Star Trek 2, I was going to mention that too, where Kirk was very attached to that book.
Yeah.
And I find it weird that he's really attached to that book because he kind of looked at Cogley funny for being attached to books. And I'm thinking too, another thing is that Cogley was an older guy. Do you think when Kirk was younger, he had a younger sensibility? When he got older, he started to get... Because a lot of times people who get older, they get into hoarding mentalities.
Maybe it's the nostalgia. They get kind of sucked up into it, where they try to get back the things that they feel they missed to make them feel younger. I don't know. Maybe that was the reason why his apartment was all full of these antiques or something. I don't know. It was just...
I mean, I'm surprised that, he didn't have a little model Enterprise in there and a bunch of old stuff from, I'm surprised they didn't put his old TOS uniform up on the wall. Or,
yeah, really, that would have been something.
or, I don't know, maybe his old phaser, his old communicator, just, because I think by that time, would TOS stuff in that point be considered retro or antique?
Probably, yeah.
So he could have had TOS. I mean, I suppose they did it now. They would have had him had a bunch of old NX-01 era stuff in there.
Yeah, that'd have been antique stuff,
Right, but he had 20th century stuff. He had old. I didn't he have a couple of those old rifles that Trelane was trying to use?
I think he had that, and I think he had a sailing boat or something, like a model.
He had the Commodore PET, I noticed, in there.
Yeah.
So he was into 20th century computers.
Yeah.
Unless it was intended to be his own personal computer and they just gussied it up to look new.
Yeah, maybe.
I mean, unless Commodore exists in the future and are making Star Trek stuff.
Yeah.
Weird to think about, isn't it? So any other cases after that? Because TNG didn't have a lot of that.
Well, they did in the first season. They had this one episode that seemed to revolve a lot about property and wealth being owned by the women, and that was Code of Honor. And
yes, and that was one of those other planet things.
Yeah. So it would seem like, everything about them with honor had to be attached to possession.
And that culture was kind of the, what was the name of it? Was it Ligon?
Yeah, I think it was Ligon. Yeah.
They were kind of a mixture of African tribalism, Chinese and Indian culture.
Yeah.
Because they had that whole thing of women owning land.
Yeah.
And men protecting it.
Right.
So basically what happened is that men were the warriors and women were basically the shareholders.
Yeah.
So, I mean, a lot of people would call that episode highly racist.
So, some way, though, you would say that the women actually dominate that society in a way.
Right, because basically the women basically control who they want in their lives for men.
Yeah.
You know, and they're willing to fight to the death to do so.
Yeah.
So in a way, it's almost like how Klingons do things.
Yeah.
Except that it's not with women. Klingons, I think women and men are both equal in the warrior department. I see women on the ships.
Yeah.
But again, the house situation.
Yeah.
You know, but on that planet, it's like, you know, if that guy who was trying to get at Yar, they could declare supersedence, and there could be fights, and there could be these traditions that were very important, and there were dowries, and there was land ownership was very important apparently.
Yeah.
Whoever owned the land had certain rights, so the motivation of marriage was to own land.
Well, that's where he got his power from, was from, you know, Urena.
Right, Lutan was his name. Yeah, and she was a landowner, and he knew that if she was no longer his first one, that he would lose some of his power.
Yeah.
That there was again kind of a caste system.
Yeah.
And kind of a hierarchy. So, you know, and of course hierarchies do develop possession issues, because hierarchies usually arranged around two things: owning land or owning the slaves that work the land.
That's right.
We've seen that in its history. And oftentimes land and slavery go hand in hand. You own the land, you own slaves, or the indentured servants, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
Whatever variant of that is. So on that planet, it was more straight up land ownership.
That's right.
Was the whole issue. And whoever owned the land gave power to the person they were married to.
Yeah.
Which again is a melange of Indian and Chinese culture. But ancient Indian and Chinese culture. They've had to adapt to changes like anybody else today, but you know. So yeah, so that was an issue. Again, as Dorothy Fontaine said, it's happening on the planet in that story. Is there any other time in the Next Generation you really saw, aside from Ferengi stories, where profit was a main thing?
There was another one.
And possession was a main thing.
Yeah, where they had this guy that was like a collector of rare and valuable things. Remember the episode "The Most Toys"?
Oh, we talked about that last week, didn't we?
Yeah.
The guy who wanted Data to sit in the chair.
Yeah.
He was another alien, and he was basically, get a collector.
Yeah.
Of sometimes things that he shouldn't be having.
Yeah, like he had that Virenty disruptor, which was banned throughout the Federation, but he had 4 of them.
And he had that little thing. What was it? The lapling. That little thing that looked like a tree branch that was moved or something.
Yeah.
And they were thought to be extinct, but he had the last surviving one.
Yeah.
He had a Willie Mays baseball card. He preserved the head of the bubble gum somehow.
Yeah.
And he thought of Data as a collection piece, even though he's essential life form. So that was actually a pretty direct idea about how and his whole thing was he was obsessed with money too.
Yeah.
He was big into profit and big into trade, and he wanted to have trophies for what he did.
Yeah.
Even to the point of Data being a trophy for his work with the Enterprise.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that was definitely a possession thing in an alien. Is it me, or by the Next Generation they deal with possession issues better with aliens than humans?
Most of it, it wasn't so much humans anymore. It was aliens they were encountering that had these issues that, you know, that dealt with, you know, having all kinds of things and money and stuff like that.
Or, well, unless we discount Goshevin, who was a colonist, but he was still a human.
Yeah.
But again, that was more self-possession like Daystrom.
Yeah, and then by the end of the Next Generation and the beginning of Deep Space Nine, you had a group of people that were willing to put the Federation at risk just so they could keep the things that they got, which was the Maquis. Now, I wanted to bring this up with you because I see there's 2 ways.
Yeah, that's a very singular story, actually. We could almost do a whole thing on that. But
there's 2 schools of thought about that. I mean, you could say that, you know, they kept those colonies that they created, not so much out of wanting to have connection to it like Goshevin did, but so much that they didn't want to have to up and leave again and start over somewhere else, you know, because that would have been a pain in the butt, you know, after they had been there for how many years after the Cardassian War. So, you know, I think it was probably a little bit more intricate.
I always thought of the Maquis as being more of an anti-imperialist gesture.
Yeah. You know, they were taking ships and weaponizing them and, you know, basically having their own little war with the Cardassians, and the Federation was trying to stop it, but they didn't care.
And the Federation were kind of siding with the Cardassians, referring to the Maquis as terrorists.
Yeah.
When at the end of the day, when you saw what the Cardassians did by aligning with the Dominion, the Federation should have totally been on the Maquis side.
Yeah.
Because it turned out, even though the Maquis were doing, and even Data had said, and they banned this on G4, of course, this episode, that sometimes terrorism has been an effective motive for change. And the Maquis, do you think the Federation got caught up with them, that they kind of betrayed the Federation in their actions?
I think the longer that thing went on with the Maquis and all that, it started to get to the point where it was becoming a personal thing with the Federation, because their tensions were heating up with the Cardassians, and it was always based on what the Maquis were doing. And they were getting more and more agitated with the Maquis, to the point where they had Cisco going out there, and trying to hunt these leaders down, the Maquis leaders down. And
again, that's why Eddington gave him Les Miserables, because he had become Inspector Javert.
Yeah.
Cisco, and at least Starfleet kind of did, hunting down the Maquis, when in fact, even though the Maquis' goals were questionable often at times, was attacking the enemy, their actual idea was kind of right. You can take that all the way back to Captain Maxwell.
Yep.
He was actually a progenitor of the Maquis in a lot of ways. Again, did the wrong thing, made a mistake, but he was absolutely right. The Cardassians, unfortunately, the Cardassian military was not to be trusted.
Yeah. The only problem was he was putting a peace treaty at risk, where I don't think the Federation or the Cardassians were really ready to start another war with each other. They were enjoying the ceasefire that existed, and Maxwell was putting all that in danger on a suspicion. Instead of reporting that suspicion, he decided to take action on his own.
I think it was more his action that was the problem, rather than the fact that his suspicion was correct.
He was so used to acting without having to answer to authority, because in wartime you don't always have the luxury of communicating with your superiors about things, because of trying to keep communications to a minimum.
Now the Maquis were operating in the Federation's sphere of influence, so I don't think that they were out of contact with the Federation. But I just think they realized the Cardassians were not up to any good.
Yeah.
And I know that the Bajoran system is not under Federation jurisdiction, but there's been a lot of discussion about the Prime Directive. I think we can get into that on its own. That maybe the Federation did an unwise thing with the Prime Directive, basically allowing subjugation of the Bajoran people.
Yeah.
But that's a Prime Directive discussion. But which we should probably have, because that's a very messy area right there.
It is. Yeah, it is.
Because there are times where it was not effective at all.
Yep. And
where it caused more problems than good. But since when has everything been as simple as a law book anyway?
Yeah.
And I think that with the Cardassian situation, with the Maquis, I just saw the Maquis as really being attached to the colonies as much as they were to a cause. And their cause was the anti-imperialism against the Cardassians.
Yeah.
Now, did they have, as far as you know, they mentioned at any point, did the Maquis, the colonists who became the Maquis on those Federation planets, did they have any direct contact with the Cardassians before the border split?
Well, I remember they, in that Next Generation episode, I think they were getting picked on, I guess, by the Cardassians a bit, and it was over, they're trying to annex worlds in the demilitarized zone. I guess that's what they called it, the border between the Federation and the Cardassians. Whether or not that's considered an area non grata, you're not supposed to be there. I guess it's a loose kind of way of saying it's neutral territory when you just say a demilitarized zone, because that's if you got colonies there on both sides, you're actually just inviting people in there that you don't want in there.
The reverse could have happened.
They were supplying people with weapons. The Cardassian.
The Federation could have gone into. I won't say Kardashian. Anyway. Little slip of the tongue.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I think with the Maquis, theoretically, the Federation could have gone into Cardassian space if they'd been a different kind of culture and tried to do the same thing, but they have their Prime Directive and their laws, they can't do that. But, have you noticed that most of the cultures the Federation deal with who aren't them have more of a conquering mentality.
Hmm.
The Klingons, the Romulans, the Ferengi. Everybody except Vulcans and the Federation are out to kind of conquer.
Yeah.
You don't really hear of many cultures outside Federation. And Vulcans, wouldn't they be kind of part of the Federation, so that doesn't really count?
Yeah, they're one of the founding planets.
But you never meet any culture outside the Federation that have Federation-type values. They're always kind of subjugating.
Yeah, or they're trying to dominate, everybody else.
It's the same difference. They're trying to dominate or subjugate or some variant of that. And it would have been interesting if the Federation encountered a group of people who were like, "Hey, we got a Federation over here too. This is not your Federation."
They never did follow up with the first Federation.
They just had the Federation by name, but apparently they had some sort of Federation.
Yeah, so where was the rest of Balak's ships at?
First, the Tron, yeah. Oh, that's what you're having right now, I guess.
Yeah, there you go.
The Tron, yeah. That's we start with that little drink, but Balak couldn't have been the only member of the first. There must have been other races who were members of that.
Yeah, I mean, what was his ship? Was the only ship?
Was the first Federation just some made-up word for that one space traveler?
I don't know. They never did follow that up. You don't know.
That was a one-shot story. I'd love to see more about that.
Yeah.
But that's something I'm kind of toying with on my own too. When I'm called like Star Wars stories, I'm thinking of Star Trek stories. Like individual episodes would be great to kind of skew off into.
Yeah.
We can do that next week. That's on my little list that I made.
Yeah.
Star Trek stories. But anyway, can you think of I think Next Generation, have we kind of gone through that one with this?
Yeah, we're on to Deep Space Nine.
Deep Space Nine, okay. I'm sure there's a lot of opportunities here to kind of deal with that.
We had that episode Paradise with Alexis that was running that colony that didn't want
to put them in boxes, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I guess you could say that's like being possessive of things not technological. I mean, she was
all rooted in the past. Her thing was that she idealized this agrarian culture
to a fault. I mean,
and basically, but it was also a draconian totalitarian interpretation.
She was going to allow one of her own people to die when she knew that Cisco had medicine in the runabout to save her.
Right. I mean, she might as well have been somebody like Jim Jones or something.
Yeah, a friggin' loon.
She was like a cult person.
Yeah.
It's like, well, basically, I want an agrarian society, and you better want it too. I'm going to put you in a box or let you die, or just. And even was reading her literature and said, "You got a problem about everybody and everything."
Yeah.
And then it turns out she sabotaged their ship to facilitate her needs.
That's right.
So, again, self-possession. It seems self-possession is more of a problem in Star Trek than possession of things, isn't it?
Yeah. They get this idea in their head and they just go crazy with it.
Is it me or do people who have old-fashioned conservative attitudes among humans on Star Trek always end up somehow being villainous?
You can't help but portray it that way because it's like you're looking at what's the end result to this kind of thing, I mean,
except Samuel Cogley, he wasn't a villain. I'm just saying most of them end up being villains.
Yeah, well, he was just idolizing books and things like that.
Right, but he wasn't idolizing the past.
Trying to create a colony of people that all have to live like her. It
was a cult, basically.
Yeah, like you said, Jim Jones. I mean,
it's funny. That was right around the time that came out. Wasn't that right around the time of like Waco and Ruby Ridge?
Yeah, you're right. It was right around that time. Yeah.
Do you think that those two things kind of inspired that?
Yeah,
the idea of these militia type people moving out and starting these cults and
I think there was a need for people to write something about that. I mean, I remember they did a lot of TV movies about Ruby Ridge and Waco on TV and all.
Oh yeah, that was the whole thing about this. The Ruby Ridge thing or the Branch Davidian cult that Koresh got involved with. Yeah. But again, going back as far to the 70s with Jim Jones, you have this whole situation where people think they're doing something for themselves, but they're actually. There was a song from the Powerpuff Girls. It was the only Powerpuff Girls musical, by the way, that doesn't get aired because it's controversial, where they talk about something called freedom beef. And basically what freedom beef is where you become a society where you sacrifice freedom for safety. Yeah. And I think basically, and that's what happens in cults usually. You end up sacrificing your freedom of being as a society or even an individual for the sake of one person. And that's kind of what happened with her.
Yeah.
Alexis, everybody thought they were free and independent, but they were actually just adjuncts of her.
That's right.
And in the end, Cisco and O'Brien and them basically had to kind of say, yeah, well, you know, she isn't who you think. And they knew, but they wanted to stay there and live their life, but in a more humane kind of way.
Yeah.
So, I mean, they wanted that kind of, they actually started enjoying that kind of life and it became their home, but they didn't want her domination of it anymore. So, because it was all about her, really.
Yeah.
You're right. So there was that self-possession that she wanted everybody to kind of think like her.
And maybe having the authority over all those people kind of went to her head too, you know, and maybe some people, they try to pretend that that doesn't matter to them, but I think it does.
Well, if she sabotaged ship for that purpose, that meant she always had an authoritarian thing in mind.
Yeah.
Because if she just taken advantage of a crash, yeah, maybe, but no. I think she did that deliberately because she wanted to play cock of the walk, and she did.
Yeah.
You know.
It's hard to avoid that when you think your cause is just, you're willing to go to any extreme, and that power kind of goes right to your head. It's like
that's a good question. The idea of absolute power corrupting absolutely, could absolute power corrupting that way be considered an extreme form of possessiveness?
For wanting all that power, yeah. I mean,
basically for wanting to control a whole society.
There's no end to it. I mean,
some of the most despicable people in history. Hitler was extremely possessive.
I mean, you have that today with people that can't get enough money. They have all the money in the world, and yet they still feel they got to have more. They're never happy, you know.
Right. I mean, that we call that greed, avarice.
Yeah.
You know, and it's and that's what the Star Trek community has. The world is supposedly getting away from. But instead of wanting to possess things, some people actually want to possess other people still.
Yeah.
But, you know, that might just say that that's just how some humans can be. Except you notice it's a minority among humans. Not every. It's usually despised, where now often it is not as much of a minority as it should be, I'll tell you.
Yeah.
But anyway, back to Deep Space Nine. There's probably some examples that I'm forgetting, but.
Yeah. Pretty much, no. I mean, that was all the ones that I could think of. I mean, Voyager really didn't have anything except for this passing interest that Tom Paris had with 20th century things. You know?
It was more aesthetic.
Yeah.
He created a lot of things on the holodeck and just furnished the room with just stuff.
I think it was just the experiences that he enjoyed of it, like building that car.
I always wondered if he was kind of an adjunct of how Star Trek fans like to be with their show.
Yeah. I mean, it's not like he cluttered his quarters with things. I mean, he had that TV in there, but it wasn't like there was a lot of stuff.
Don't tell me you wouldn't do this. If you had access to a holodeck now, what would be the first thing you'd do with it?
Well, I would probably recreate, you know, some of the decks of the Enterprise or something.
Thank you.
You know?
Same with me. I mean, that's how we do with Captain Proton.
Yeah.
I mean, now, of course, he could have done the most obvious thing and said, "Oh, give me a bridge of an old NX-01 or an old Connie."
Yeah.
And he loved the old 20th century stuff.
Yeah.
And I think that also connected to if that was the mid 90s, late 90s. Do you remember a period where people were obsessed with they used to call them B movies, but actually the term has been changed to Z movies. You know, Ed Wood, RKO horror. Just, you know, old low budget black and white movies. You can get sets of them over it. You know, with all the cliches, the screaming damsel in distress, the aliens who all speak in double soliloquies, you know, just all the old Buck Rogers, all that stuff, the serials. Yeah. So Captain Proton, where the recaps never match the actual show.
Yeah.
I always found that funny where he makes Harry Kim watch the recaps before they do them. And you think, that's not what happened in the last thing we did. And he said, oh, well, back in the days, they used to have people coming to the theaters. They used to have to do that. You know, these offbeat.
Yeah, it was a teaser to get people back in the theater.
Right, they do things that never happened in the last one, or were all exaggerated, or whatever. and this is funny. I found how Harry Kim made him watch those recaps. We made Harry watch those recaps. Or when he watched the recap, if they're just going to do it, they should have started the program. But he was so involved in the culture and loving, like, we're going to see a movie, and then we're going to be the movie. And
yeah,
I still wonder how they turned them black and white, though.
Yeah, that's a weird thing that they can do on the holodeck, make everything black and white.
You imagine if Tom Paris came to the bridge black and white?
Yeah.
Ma'am, I don't think we're in Kansas anymore.
Like somehow he walked off the holodeck somehow and still kept the black and white.
I found it funny when they walk into the holodeck and they turn black and white with the program.
Yeah.
I don't know how the holodeck does that. That was a really big advancement.
It's got to be something to do with the lighting or something that can change.
I wonder why they didn't make Dixon Hill black and white.
I don't know.
That would have fit with the era.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah, but you're right. I think it was more an aesthetic thing with him. I don't think he was into possessing things.
Yeah.
I think he just liked the aesthetic of the old cars and the aesthetic of the old movies. And
yeah.
Well, I guess we can go back to the Next Generation kind of with that too. Troy's father used to write her stories about what they call the Ancient West.
The Ancient West.
I always find that interesting. What is everything past the 20th century ancient in their time? I mean, nobody ever calls, Tom Paris didn't call that ancient. Maybe after 1900 it's ancient.
Yeah.
So I don't know but I get a kick out how they call it the Ancient West. Because we call it the Old West, so it has to be ancient with them. But anyway, so with Voyager, I can't really think of anything in Voyager.
Yeah,
like
I know.
With Enterprise, though,
it's like even the people on Voyager themselves really didn't have any anything that was obsessive about them. You know,
apparently Voyager had so many problems that they would be reft of supplies and almost breaking down within a week of being there.
Yeah, they probably just, they were just so focused on trying to stay alive that they didn't really think about.
I discussed that because I find it weird that even a ship as small as the Intrepid class would be out of commission in 1 week like that.
Well, actually, Intrepid isn't really small. It's just they had just a very few people on it. It was only at like 150. It's actually a little bit bigger than the Excelsior.
But it has more equipment on it and stuff.
Yeah. They just have more. The quarters are bigger.
Which is why I wonder why, they ran out of supplies so quick. But that's a whole other story. Why Voyager was...
Yeah, the second episode, we're running out of fuel!
Or did they go with one of those things they had in Timescape where time went different for some reason? I mean, Voyager should have really been experiencing those problems until the 4th season.
Yeah.
I mean,
they should have had plenty of juice here to get them.
As I said, if that was a Galaxy-class starship, they'd have had no problems those 7 years.
Yeah.
They were meant to go on missions that long. So we're like, we're just going to lounge out here in the Delta Quadrant and find wormholes.
Yeah, so there must have been a lot of things must have happened between the end of the first episode and the beginning of the second one that we didn't see.
And also presuming that was the caretaker in that took place in their first year out there.
Yeah, maybe that was the whole year.
And even still, I can't imagine why after a year they'd be that bad off.
They probably would do that to allow the books, the non-canon books to fill in that gap. Maybe that's what they were doing.
And there's like one non-canon book in that time. No, there's no non-canon book in that time. So that was just a weird thing. That first opener where they're discussing the supplies being down should have been something they discussed maybe in Scorpion.
Yeah.
Maybe at that point there might have been a problem with resources.
And remember when we was complaining about them bringing Seska back for that stupid time shatter where they were going through different time periods on Voyager? Well, why didn't they do something where they actually showed like a mission that we didn't see, that happened? And instead of having Seska there, just eliminate Seska and do something else there, that at a period.
Yeah, that would have been a good idea. That way I wouldn't have had to worry about.
Yeah, it would have been something that we didn't see. We get to see in that time thing, or something.
And they kept going back to. This is my Seska from now on. Seska.
Yeah.
Power to defeat Seska, easy.
Yeah.
So anyway.
Yeah, same thing with that hideous theme song from Enterprise there, Remote.
Yep. I always do that with Enterprise. No, they're not going to hold me, dude.
Give me that remote back. Give it to me.
But anyway, so, back to things that we're talking about here.
Yeah.
So Voyager didn't deal with it much. Now, you mentioned Enterprise. Okay. Possessiveness in that series, and this is the funny thing. I really haven't explored all the Enterprise episodes as intricately as I have the others.
I think one episode that stands out is that one where that guy from the moon, he takes his, what's the episode where they go to Mars and he's
Oh, you mean the one about Terra Prime?
yeah, Terra Prime. I mean, this is a guy that has this idea of all the aliens leaving Earth.
You're kind of a xenophobe.
Yeah, and he's taken that to an extreme, I think, and that is, I mean, that's kind of an obsessiveness for reaching for.
Yeah, again, it's more of a self-possession.
Yeah, everyone to try to be like, because Colonel Green was his idol. I mean, and we knew what Colonel Green was.
Yeah, and Colonel Green led a genocidal war, so
yeah,
you know, this guy wasn't exactly idol. It would be like looking at a guy like Napoleon or Hitler as a model.
Yeah,
you know, so or Gaddafi or Mussolini or anybody like that.
I mean, we should have saw a lot of episodes on Enterprise where humans were still kind of digging themselves out of all this possessiveness of things and having materialistic things and all this other stuff, you know, to clutter up their lives, you know, because it was closer to the 20th century. I think we could have seen a little bit more of that, which we didn't.
I don't know. I call it possession because it's a living thing, but I found it. I mean, I know the Data had Spot, but we really never had a captain that had a very active pet. We had Picard who had a goldfish, but you can't call, well, not a lionfish. You can't call a fish interactive.
Yeah.
But we never had, you know, you never had a captain who was like a Bond guy with that little cap he would pet, you know.
Yeah.
Or, you know, Janeway never had an iguana or anything.
Yeah.
So, you know, I think the idea that
by that time, I guess they think that's like enslaving animals, and you know, maybe they just don't do that anymore in the future.
Data had a pet.
Yeah. Well, yeah, maybe he did it for the experience of what it's like to have a pet, not so much enslaving, just to kind of.
Jordy's sister had a cat.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, that's right.
But I'm just saying, I don't know. Having a pet isn't enslaving. You have to take care of them and kind of treat them like they're part of your family.
Yeah.
I mean, you have a cat, so that's basically you know they're.
Yeah, I mean, we don't look at it as enslaving the animal. We
That's what they call it, pet adoption.
Yeah.
It's adopting
it as a family member. When we look at a pet, you know, it's just
right. It's you're adopting it. So I don't think there's a when they say enslavement, they mean like putting an animal in the cage to eat it.
Yeah.
Which is more enslavement, but you know, I'm just saying that I don't know, but it just the captain having a pet around seemed like the sentimental attachment to a certain kind of thing. But even in that time, you saw everybody kind of being very spare. Of course, those little tiny rooms in NX-01 couldn't really fit much.
Yeah, which was kind of surprising. They would let him have a dog, because where would he go pee? You know,
Anyway, go do that and they recycle it into what they ate the next day.
I mean, a dog will prop his leg up around any corner. So I mean, people walking on, they slip on a dog piss or something.
Down to the reason why captains never had pets anymore.
Because those floors were metal. I mean, and what's the worst thing to put on the metal is like water. I mean,
you imagine if Picard or Janeway had a cat or something, and it got out and started messing up the whole ship, and
it was digging its claws in the carpeting. You could see the cat going, you know, like they always do with their claws. They always trying to ripping the claws.
That's why I think Data had the captain was always confined to his quarters. At the few occasions to get out.
Yeah, because the door would open for it, you know.
and apparently made it with another cat, so.
And that thing could survive anything. It went down with the ship there, and it lived, you know, with all the stuff that fell on them.
And of course, you know, the weird thing with Spot was there were like 4 or 5 different spots, and apparently Spot could change gender spontaneously. So.
They even had a lizard Spot.
Right, so Spot was a shapeshifter.
Yeah.
An alien shapeshifter cat that could be iguana. Well, the iguana was a reason why I was that way, but
yeah.
I mean, remember it was like different colors and different genders sometimes.
Yeah.
Sometimes male, sometimes female.
I think maybe because they couldn't get the cat to do what they wanted, so they kept trying different cats, you know, to see if they could train it. But you can't really train a cat; they just do it.
So I mean, they should have had it like the animated series.
Yeah.
Presenting Data's new cat, Spot 2.
Spot 2, you know, giant tigers.
the giant cat from Cat's Paw comes back.
Yeah.
Spot 2. Okay, so any more in Enterprise you could think of? Because you're at the 4th season of Enterprise now, and
yeah, not really. I mean, it seemed like they were just everything was mission oriented. And
So would you say that possessiveness in Star Trek was more equated to specific individuals and their needs than it was a society as a whole in general?
Yeah, TOS seemed to have dealt a lot with that, with possessiveness and the need to have things more than any of the other shows and movies. But I guess it would stand to reason. The further in the future you go, the less you'll see of it. So maybe by the 2370s or something like that, you would see humanity being less materialistic, less wealth oriented, but more possessiveness of ideals and things like that, and letting that run amok. So maybe that's kind of where it was headed that way. So
is there anything else you wanted to add?
No, that was pretty much it. That's I'm pretty sure I might have missed something. I'm sure, but
well, that's why I wish there were more people. I probably should do this every episode.
Yeah.
People who watch it on Facebook.
Yeah.
Don't just click on the like. Click on this, watch it, subscribe to our channel, comment, keep it clean, get the little bell for notifications. And that bell is important now because now, you can't just, click on somebody's click on somebody's channel and get their videos automatically. If you want to get their videos mentioned to you, click the little bell, you'll get information. So I'm thinking about running a subscribing contest soon, but I don't have anything you could win yet. So maybe I could autograph a cheap hat. Maybe a little piece of my outfit. I don't know. But anyway, seriously, I'll find something I can do. But please subscribe. We need a subscriber base up. We're just starting out. We are not sponsored. I'm rapidly losing whatever little disinterest I had in sponsorship because of what I'm seeing. So we're trying to go indie. We're trying to stay indie. So just subscribe to our channel and watch our videos and comment, which I noticed you have not been doing. Our videos have been getting very low numbers, and I'm not concerned about that as much as I am the fact that you're not watching. I'm not possessed by an obsession.
It's not like we don't know what's trending on any given moment on YouTube.
Right, I know what's trending. Right, and as far as what's trending in Star Trek, it's not what we're talking about, okay?
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of things that aren't Star Trek that are trending too, but I'm not dumping cold water on my head for ALS, thank you.
Yeah,
I am not going to
avoid the alternate realities here.
Right, and you're certainly not going on this channel and doing any Harlem Shakes. So yeah. I'm talking about trends that are 4 or 5 years old, but I'm sorry. Trending is like what's up to the minute. This is how far back I am with trending. We're just doing our own thing. So subscribe, look at our channel, enjoy little moments of padding like this because we're trying to fill the end of the episode. But, subscribe because there's interesting stuff here. And it's, this word has such a nasty connotation these days, but this is an alternative to alternative facts about Star Trek. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
Okay? We're the alternative to alternative facts.
Yeah.
And since alternative facts are lies, we're trying to give you the facts. So, and we're trying to give you some humor about it in a relaxed way. So, you're not going to get any scary conspiracy theories with us. You're cool. So subscribe, enjoy. For those of you who do watch, tell your friends, whatever. So we'll see you next time on episode 48. I got some ideas for it. I got 3 all lined up. So until then, long and prosper.